Formula Access, we've got another one for you. We got Lars Oude-Hendrikman of Williams Racing. Lars is the chief of staff for Williams, primarily VIP guest manager for Dorilton Capito, the owners of Williams Racing, and Jost Capito. This is going to be a good episode, guys. This gives you a really good behind the scenes look at celebrities, personal guests, family guests, a behind the scenes look at the pressure, the travel that goes on within a top level team. So guys, get ready for an episode. Lars is awesome. It was a great conversation. Stay tuned, be patient as usual. I'm new at this. I appreciate you guys listening through this and just bearing with me as I get these conversations ramped up. They always get good in the middle and the end. So guys, appreciate it. Enjoy. Welcome, Ryan Hunt here, Formula Access. I keep telling you guys that I'm bringing the people of motorsports to your doorstep. Once again, I've got another one for you. Today, we've got a very special guest, Lars Oude-Hendrikman, and he is with Williams F1. Lars, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, hey Ryan, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's really great and an honor to be with you tonight.
It's barely lunchtime here, so that's always weird scheduling because it's everybody wants to do these in the morning when they're fresh, and I'm like, no, it's like midnight. I can't do it.
Yeah, it's getting dark here. I'm in Spain and Barcelona at the moment. Okay, flying out to Singapore tomorrow, and yeah, I live with my girlfriend together. We lived in London, but moved to Barcelona this year to have a little bit of a different situation, and she works at the university here, so we took the chance, moved to a very sunny place, and it helps a little bit of to get into recovery in between the races as well. To be able to go to the beach. And
so you're not confined to the home base?
No.
What do they call that? Formula One Valley in the UK?
In the UK, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's obviously when we start traveling to races, you go to London Heathrow Airport, and I mean, as soon as you enter the airport, or as soon as you enter the garage, you meet people from F1 all over the place, and the airports, the queues, the lounges, everything is occupied by Formula One people. So yeah, that's really cool. But also sometimes it's really nice to travel alone here from Barcelona.
Do you get fans that hang out at the airport waiting for you guys all to pile in?
Yes. Not so much in Heathrow though, but way more in the various destinations where we go to. So it's either on the arrivals, but also on the departures. I always ask myself, how do they know? How do they know when, like, who arrives at what time? And do they spend like 12 hours or 15 hours at the airport waiting for us? Or and then also when you arrive after 15 hours a red eyes flight, you arrive at the airport, you just want to get to the hotel to get the shower, and then you meet people there. I mean, it's great. It's really cool to meet people, and I'm not the person they look after. But sometimes I'm with the people they look after. So it's always good. It's nice to feel the passion of the people. Absolutely. No, I think it's really cool to have so many fans around.
Well, you're the star of the show today, so they're all going to be waiting for you now.
Yeah. Let's see how busy Singapore will be on. I think Wednesday lunchtime I arrive. So that's a little hint for the people waiting for me in Singapore.
You're putting a big weight on my shoulder now. You can be like, Ryan, nobody came over
Nobody's here.
Jumped on me.
Yeah, we call you from the airport right away. Yeah.
I thought this would have a bigger impact, Ryan. Come on.
Yeah.
So just for the audience, give everybody an intro. Like, what do you do for Williams? What's your job?
Yeah. So that's my 7th season with Williams now. I started working mostly with Claire and also Frank. He used to travel to all the races in my first year as well. So that was really great and sort of a dream came true for me as being a Formula One fan for so long. And then I prior to that, I worked in Formula One for 3 years, but more on the sponsorship side. So I had not so many contacts to like the core team people. I knew them. I would rarely see them on different races or racetracks, but I never had this sort of access. So I started working for Claire and Frank. I used to travel with them. I used to do all the logistics, the transportation, the ground transportation. So I would meet them on their arrival at the airport, take them to the various places they want me to go. And so I started organizing all the little things around their race weekends so that they had a good time and they didn't need to think about of where to go for dinner tonight, or so that they just had a good feeling and would be able to concentrate on their jobs.
Is Claire in real life? Is she? I mean, she's a very, very well-spoken, articulate, very much cares about her team, and just built in a. I don't. Again, I'm only looking from the outside, but it would appear that she's very progressive, and the culture of what Williams is and the work environment that the people have there. I mean, is that off camera too?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is totally. That it was her family, not only Frank and Mark, her husband, but also the whole race team was her family. And this is how she would treat everyone within the team. So that was really great. I mean, as you know, things has changed a little bit as we have new owners now and a new boss, which we can make the turn here to what my role is now with them. So I still do a little bit of what I did prior to that with Jost and also with the Dorilton people, like the owners of the team. So I take care of all their VIP guests, of their family members if they attend races. And also I help out in the hospitality with taking care of the VIP guests. Which it's quite similar to what I did before, but the role evolved over the years, obviously.
I think I want to set the VIP side thing. I want to set that aside for 1 second. You guys, the amount of travel and just the amount of logistics that are ever increasing, and next year is even more. I mean, how complex does this get for just the team, not their guests, not their family, not high profile people coming to an event? How challenging is this? Obviously you have to know them well enough to know they don't like certain things, they do like other things.
Yeah, well, you're right. Obviously it's quite a big challenge for everyone who is involved to cope the amount of traveling. Also the amount of being away from home or from family, from kids, from wives and girlfriends. And I think that's a big thing. And that's really vital, especially next year for the teams to cope with all of that, to treat the people right. I think at the same time, we all love traveling. We all love going racing. So that definitely helps. I'm quite sure. So if you're, I mean, sometimes people have a job and they have to earn some money and they go to work just to earn some money. But I think you cannot do that in our jobs in Formula One. You have to be really passionate about it. You have to love motor racing, traveling, hotels, in best case also airplanes, because we spend quite a good amount on planes.
Yeah.
And especially this year in airports as well. So yeah, that's really a vital point here.
And just for listeners, you know, I had Daniel Ricciardo's performance coach on as my first episode, and we were talking, you know, Formula One also compared to, you know, being a business owner. And, you know, I in 2019, before the world kind of changed, you know, I was doing 50 to 55 flights a year, you know, which is pretty consistent with what your level of travel is there. And I mean, I remember myself, I mean, I obviously had to arrange all my own travel, but, you know, that was taxing. And, you know, just the amount of time that you spend finding a hotel, you know, getting a car, you know, managing logistics and meetings and travel. This is all the stuff that you're doing for multiple people.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a great travel office working inside our factory, and they would usually book all the flights. They would manage all the transfers from the hotels to the various hotels, to the tracks. It depends a little bit of where we go. We have rental cars, or we have driven cars or buses. That depends on the logistics, and also a little bit on the safety of those places. Like in Mexico City or Sao Paulo,
Right.
we usually have like mini buses with people who know where they go. From my role, how my role evolved, I was at my first year or my first 2 years, I was driving everywhere. And I got lost in Sao Paulo during the night when my navigation system was not working. I ended up in an area. I mean, I really like to go to this race. It's a really cool race. The circuit is amazing.
Yeah.
And the fans are also so passionate. But as everyone knows, there are some areas in the city which you better not go to, especially if you like not local. So, and that happened to me, and I eventually, after 2 hours or so, I found my hotel during the night, and everything was fine. And I have a friend who works for a Brazilian TV station, and years later, I told him, and I showed him on the map the way I went, which I had in mind still, because I know where I left the highway. And he was looking at me, and he was saying, like, "Yeah, that was your second birthday, actually." That you managed to get to the hotel without getting in trouble anywhere.
Were you by yourself, or did you have?
Yes.
I mean, did you have Claire in the car?
By myself, first time in Sao Paulo, small rental car. Yeah, that was landed in the middle of the night. Came from Mexico, was quite exhausted, just wanted to get to the hotel, and yeah, ended up in this little adventure. So, but usually situations like this nowadays within the teams are really taken care of. So nobody usually travels alone from the teams, and especially in those cities, we have people to pick us up. Like transfers are organized, and yeah, I think that's really well taken care of from the factory side on this.
How did you get started at Williams? How did you even get into this type of role? I mean, it sounds like anyone's dream job.
Well, it is certainly my dream job.
Yeah.
Which also helps with all the amount of traveling and all the amount of stress we have sometimes. It's also quite obvious, I think, that it's not a job which you just apply for or which just exists like that.
Yeah.
So that was, I came from an agency side, and I had some contacts through the agencies, but mainly with sponsors. But also I knew somebody who would work for Williams in the past, and she knew the team manager at that time of the team. So they called the agency to ask if they would know somebody who could take care of Claire during all the races. And I did obviously I did well, and I had left a good impression on them, so they called me to ask, which was sort of funny because I was just at the end of the year before, I was thinking to myself that because I was traveling so much prior to that, and I was about well, next year I'm gonna start traveling less and not so much anymore. And in early February I got the call, and I mean, it was a great opportunity. I loved getting this opportunity, and did not have to think about it a lot. But since then, obviously, the amount of traveling went through the roof. So it got even more than it was before. But yeah, I mean, it's for a good reason, and I absolutely love it. That's for sure.
I think it's a real testament to, anybody that's out there to just always operate in excellence, because you never know who's watching. Like, you never know when Claire's person is paying attention to you, and all of a sudden your dream job gets dropped in your lap. And and traveling aside, but you have somebody approach you because you did something very well. I always think that's something special that people forget about. It's like, I'm doing my job because I hate it, not thinking, who am I interacting with, in all of those times. So good job.
Yeah. So the pressure is there, and it's obviously still there. Also working with Jost and the Dorilton guys, and it's obviously a different kind, and we had to get to know each other as well. So it took a while, obviously. And Jost is a person, as a boss who is like everyone basically in Formula One is quite demanding and expects a lot. So the level of work you have to put in, everything is quite high, and everyone expects a very, very good performance, and to be very precise. But also at the same time, especially Jost and Dorilton, they totally appreciate what they get. So they pay you back, not financially, but also in terms of being human and being nice, and knowing that the situation is not easy for everyone, and that pressure can be very high, and sometimes it's difficult, especially if you have a triple or double or triple header, and the pressure gets high. You get tired from the traveling, and you basically work every day. And but yeah, they appreciate the work, and that then in the beginning, in the end, makes it basically a round thing, which is, I like to put a lot of work in it, and I like to get everything to perfection, because I know I get rewarded for this.
Absolutely. In the second season of Drive to Survive, I mean, you have a really interesting vantage point in your role. The sheer amount of pressure on a team manager feels in that show really, really intense. I mean, you as a viewer, you feel it. I mean, and to me, how much of that is Netflix, and how much of that is the actual pressure that they're dealing with out on track. I know how much I feel on a kart track with my son. I can't imagine, when you've got hundreds of millions of dollars at risk and thousands of employees and all that.
Well, the way how we saw it on TV obviously was Netflix, but also the pressure is absolutely real.
Yeah.
And you have to have a very strong personality, and you have to be a very tough person to cover or to cope with that amount of stress, because as you said, there's quite a lot of money involved. It's the people within the team. I mean, we saw it in the past couple of times, and then you have 800 people. In Williams terms, it was a family-owned business,
right?
You have the responsibility for all those 100 people, and I think the pressure is really high. And it's also, what is really complicated in Formula One is that you cannot you cannot turn around the team really quickly, or you cannot just put like extra 5 million and then the car is half a second quicker. Unfortunately, it's not like this.
Right.
We've tried all that, I think, and all the other teams did as well. But you need a lot of really everything has to go in the right way, and even though you work hard, and I mean, we had the situation the last couple of years that we were at the back of the grid very often, but we had great engineers, we had great mechanics, we have great drivers, we have great hospitality, great marketing, and everyone really works extremely hard. But then when certain things doesn't come together, and I mean, even if you have the car which is at the back of the grid, it's maybe half a second slower or a second slower than the top car, but that's still then the 9th or 10th fastest racing car of the world.
Right.
So it's still immensely quick. That's what people sometimes forget.
I think that gets discounted a lot, because I think in stateside, we're used to, a spec series, an IndyCar, which the cars are more or less the same. Whereas Formula One is a constructors, it's constructors and independents, warring it out.
Yeah.
And even at the back of the grid, you can create a driver like Russell, who can go from the back of the grid to more or less the front of the grid. And I think it's a testament to that it is a constructor sport, but also that you can have real talent in a team, like Williams or Haas or whomever. But I've also just, to me, Williams has weathered storms that independents have failed at in the past, and I don't even view the transition from the Williams family to Dorilton as a failure. I feel like it is an adjustment in the business for long-term survival. I mean, most companies would have come in and changed the name and changed the brand and the history and the culture because they want to make their own name. And, and you guys are still maintaining the DNA that was created by both Claire and Frank.
Yeah. And that is also, I think, the DNA is still in most of the people within the team. And as you said, also, Dorilton saw the value of that. I mean, having a brand name like this is also an asset you can work on. And I think that Dorilton's approach there was really good. And as is Jost's approach with that.
How is it working for somebody like Jost?
Great.
So in leadership, and look, I want to respect privacy and whatever, like, don't give me anything I shouldn't be hearing, but I think there's always two types of leaders out there when it comes to the team, and that is when you're dealing with pressure at that level, it can either come in and explode from you, and it's like shrapnel, it hits everything around you, or you can internalize that and focus it, like, yes, that was a really bad race, or, this was a really bad situation, and then focus it on the problem versus like taking all that pressure and just lashing out over anyone that's within eyesight, and I think that's what I always want to understand with these team leaders. Like, do you guys walk into a back room and then they just start throwing keyboards and staplers around, or,
Well, I saw in the last couple of years, I definitely saw both ways in various people and various roles. And I mean, also in every role you get the certain or different level of pressure, and obviously the higher the role, technically the higher the pressure as well. But how it is now, I think, is on a very it's very human. So it's very, you can talk about everything. We're getting in a very good culture of speaking about problems. I mean, problems and mistakes happen. Nobody is perfect.
Right.
And but I mean, and you can make mistakes, you can take the responsibility at this point, and then you can talk about it and look at or take all the actions in play, or put all the actions in place that these mistakes that didn't happen again. And I think that's the position we are in now, or that's what what my situation is mostly. And now, as I said earlier, it's really great. I really like working with Jost, and I don't say that because he or somebody else might listen to it. No, I think, as I said, you cannot, if you're not convinced, and if you don't have the passion, and if you don't like and enjoy your job, it's the pressure and it's just too much.
Yeah. He seems, I don't really know the word for it. He just seems like he's very relaxed and kind of joyous in an intense amount of pressure. And I don't mean the kind of relaxed that I don't care, but very much aware of his surroundings and what, where actual problems lie, and where to address it. But it certainly doesn't seem toxic at all.
And it's not, you're right. I mean, with so much experience in motorsport, I mean, he has seen it all in various racing programs and various companies, I think, and you can really feel the experience he has, and that he can pass that on also to other people to become the same, and that's really a good feature, I think.
I mean, how close are you to them? I mean, when you're traveling, are you eating breakfast with them at the hotel? Are you,
Yeah, well, I see them definitely way more often than my family and my parents. And also, when I lived in London, we would meet at the airport. So we travel together, we sit in the plane together, we travel to the hotel. And when we stay in the same hotel, we meet for breakfast, we meet for dinner and lunch. And obviously you talk a lot about job-related things, but sometimes it's also good to especially talk not about job-related things, to have this half an hour in the morning when you drive into the circuit to maybe go through something different, to, I don't know, what your football team did or what friends did funny, or we talk about German politics in the car or stuff like this. So things you cannot speak about with any other people at the track, just to get about it in this, to get a little break at this point, actually. So when we both listen, like say we're on a flyway in a different time zone, and then he reads German news in the morning, and when I get ready in the morning, I always listen to a German radio station that gives even though I don't live in Germany, but when I travel in the hotel in the morning, it gives me a little bit of feeling home, like just getting the news in the morning or whatever daytime it is in Germany. And then sometimes at breakfast we will talk about that, and so that gives us a little bit of a different start into the day, but it also it feels a little bit home away from home, so to say. So
you're also over the bigger guests, so family as well as high profile guests that come as a guest of the team. That's exciting. True. I mean, is that more intimidating or less intimidating? Or are you so over intimidation?
Not anymore, I would say. It just comes out from experience, I think. I mean, I definitely had situations years ago where I was nervous about people, especially if you're getting from people like from B or C class VIPs from various countries up to like internationally known famous actors. I remember when I met Michael Douglas for the first time, because I see famous people really often, but I'm not the guy who runs after them taking selfies and autographs and all that stuff.
Neither am I. You're
in my role that would be quite unprofessional, to be honest. so I overall, I think I have 2 pictures, and usually if photographers are around, they would take pictures, and it's obviously it's also nice to have. But also Renee Zellweger, for example, she asked me for a picture. That was quite funny because she asked me if we should do a picture together. But she was wearing, that was the first year after COVID, so she was wearing a face mask, a hat, and sunglasses. So it's a cool photo for me.
Yeah.
But she could be really everyone.
Yeah.
So is one of my favorite guests we had in Silverstone was Harrison Ford. And he was really, really cool person, really relaxed, and he really enjoyed his time with us. And also there, a photographer took a really cool picture, and even Harrison Ford would take his mask off for the photographer. But in this moment, I just didn't, because I thought that, well, I'm not the guy the photographer's after, so I will leave this mega face mask in my face. So technically also a very cool picture, but yeah, with the big face mask and maybe even sunglasses. So no, but I really enjoy meeting those people as well, especially if they are interested in F1 or if they show passion as well.
Do you find, I mean, you're kind of the liaison, right? So you're taking them around the track. You're like the leader of the experience for them as a guest. Is that?
Yeah, we work together so we have a team for this, because we not only have VIP guests, we also have this corporate guests and family members of various, like of the drivers or the families, and of Jost, and also the owners. So we have I would say a few different levels of working within hospitality for our guests. And that's so we have partner managers, and they work for the certain sponsor and for certain combinations, and they're in contact with them through the whole year, because if you have a sponsor, they would send guests to various amount of races. So these partner managers are always in contact with people from the companies, and also with the guests then. And then we have a great guest experience team, which we kind of created new this year, which basically takes responsibility of all other guests which are not partnership, if I say it correctly. And I work very close with them. I need them, they need me. It's a great hand in hand. We do most of the things together. But as I work so closely with Jost and the board as well, so I come from that side, and then we arrange the whole weekend experience together. And those VIP guests, like the actors I already mentioned, they mostly come only on a Sunday, and they have a very straightforward plan on how to spend the day at the track, like going to the garage, getting pictures with the drivers, having a nice lunch or dinner, and I think we are the only team together with McLaren which has a 2-star Michelin chef in the hospitality, cooking for the guests. So that belongs also to the experience.
Do you find that when these guests come, that they are just kind of, maybe curious is the word? I mean, do they want to go, to the pit wall? Do they want to be next to the car? Do they really want to understand everything there is to understand about the sport or what's happening at the moment?
Yeah, most of them. I mean, you always have guests who are there for being at F1, having the experience. But most of the guests are like really interested in having a great experience. And also it's a bit different when you appear at the track and when you see the motorhomes and you see all the trucks and you see all the behind the scenes it's quite overwhelming for most people because they think you would need like 10 people for a car. But I mean, we have so many engineers and mechanics and the marketing team and comms team and everything is working there. So it can be quite overwhelming. And then especially at the European races where we take our motorhomes, which usually are made out of 10 to 20 trucks. So they're quite massive. So now most of the people are really interested, especially if it then comes to the garage. Like if you go to the garage, if they see the car for the first time, if they hear the car for the first time, because it sounds quite cool when we fire up the car in the garage. And also when they see all the screens and all the data and all the engineers working and the mechanics work like orchestrated, like everything moves really smooth. And then most of the guests are really interested in getting more details about the cars, about the whole race itself. Yeah.
Do you see many fans get created at that experience?
Sorry, say it again.
Like, do you see people that don't really understand or know motorsports well that come for that experience that then become very, very interested in the sport itself?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you go to these VVIP guests, they have usually quite a busy schedule and a busy calendar themselves. But we had it a couple of times that people came back for another race and another place because they really, really enjoyed the whole experience. Yeah, and some of them didn't have any experience with F1 related before.
I gotta say the first I went to an IndyCar race earlier this year as a guest of a sponsor of Andretti, and and I got to go to hospitality and spend some time with Mario and the team leader, and I got to go to the pit wall, watch a pit stop. I got to go to the grid before the race. I don't know if I could go to a race ever again without that. I mean, it was so fascinating. I don't really know what that would feel like just sitting in the grandstand.
Being I totally know what you mean. I mean, I ask myself that every now and then when I'm at the track. And I mean, I've been to 170, 180 races, I think, in the last 10 years, maybe. And when we arrive at the circuit, sometimes in the morning you see fans queuing outside, and we usually arrive quite early at the circuits. So we spend quite a lot of time during the day at the track, and then you have people queuing up. I mean, like in Monza, last 2 weeks ago on a Sunday morning. That happens for us to get to the track super early, like I think it was 7:30, 7 in the morning, and the race was not till 3. And the Monza park was not even, the gates were still closed, but there were hundreds of people outside of the gates waiting to get in, which I found really fascinating. I thought we would get to the circuit super easily, but we were stuck in traffic around the circuit, which at that time on a Sunday morning I found really special. But yeah, and sometimes I ask myself, how do people see the race then, because they see it completely from a different perspective than I do, obviously, or we do. I think it's also it's a completely different approach, because they have more like the festival character of going to the race, if that makes sense. So they have the whole experience with having the fan zones, trying to get autographs, and still being able to see a lot of the track action. And I think we have, in most of the circuits, we have quite a lot of big screens around the circuit, so people can follow the action quite closely. But surely it's different. And as you said, like being on the grid or being in the pit lane is very, very special. So I usually don't go to the grid. So I only, as I said, I was on 170, 180 races. I was on the grid maybe 20 times. Probably even less. So that's very, very special to be on that grid.
What's your spot? If you are going there as a fan, if you got the day off, at a race, I mean, where are you going to go catch the race?
I never have a day off at a race.
If you did.
First of all. To be honest, I mean, I find it super fascinating, and I try to do that with guests at some circuits, to not only be in the pits or see the cars leaving the garage, but also I love being at corners or chicanes. Mm-hmm. So if you can see the deceleration, the acceleration of the cars live, that is what I totally love. And to be honest, not on many tracks you can see this kind of action from where we are located. Mm-hmm. There are only a handful of tracks where the motorhomes are close to the circuit, so you can see a little bit. So I always recommend, if you have the chance, go try to see the cars like really in action. Like the deceleration is phenomenal. You cannot believe, I think, when you see it for the first time. I even sometimes think that's impossible. They approach the corner so quick, and then they hit the brakes, and it's fantastic to see.
I think at a much more relative level, driving your car through a windy road is a much different style of a racing line. My son races go-karts, and occasionally I'll go out and I'll race with him, and it takes a minute to like get your head wrapped around all of the mechanical grip that even a go-kart has. I can't imagine what a Formula One car feels like, but to let off the gas into almost a hairpin turn, and then as you're like coming into the turn, accelerate, goes against everything in your mind. Is, it's like, okay, if I hit the gas through this turn, I'm going to be in the wall. And it actually makes you go faster. And it's different. A friend of mine has gone in a 2-seater around the track, and he's just like, he's like, yeah, everything you thought about driving is worthless, because you're like, okay, he's gonna brake, and then all of a sudden he gasses it, and you're like, ah!
He's not gonna brake.
No.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And whenever you have the chance to see that live, I mean, it still doesn't give you the feeling how it is in the car, I think. But I mean, I've seen drivers getting out of the car. I was very close to the drivers, and it was only minutes after the race, even before they go to the press. And I've seen drivers there, like, and often you see them when they do interviews after the race. They look quite relaxed and stuff. But right after the race, or when the adrenaline falls down, you see them. That's really hard work. Yeah. What they do in the cars is really tough.
So you got a really neat vantage point in your role. What's been your pinch me moment where you kind of were just like, how did I even end up here? Like, I can't even believe this is happening.
I have that regularly, and I actively try to get this feeling every now and then again, to make myself aware of how lucky I was, and to be happy and not to be annoyed about a long flight or about long days, but to see, look, that's a chance. I'm here in a position where millions of people would love to be, and I cannot be negative about something. And there was quite a funny story again. So when I was watching Formula One as a teenager, at the beginning I was watching it with my dad, and then later on I was watching it with friends and also alone. And we always had a certain ice cream at home. So I would usually, on a Sunday afternoon when I watched the race, I would just happened. I don't know exactly how it started, but I would have those ice cream and watch the race. And then when I was at Williams, we had those ice cream manufacturers as a sponsor. So we always had this ice cream there. And I remember the first time I took an ice cream, it was in Sao Paulo. And I was at the track, and it was the first time that I was in Sao Paulo. So I had that ice cream, was eating the ice cream, was sitting in such an iconic track where championships got decided.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there having this ice cream and sitting at the track with the Williams uniform, and cars were flying by. And that was a very, very, one of the first, or which I still have in memory, that like 16-year-old me sitting in my bed or in my living room watching Formula One, thinking this world is so far away from me. I will never, that will always be technically a parallel universe. And yeah, now suddenly it was me sitting there having even the same ice cream. It felt kind of surreal.
I did a podcast with Tatiana Calderon,
Yeah.
and I asked her the same question, and she said, she was saying, I as a child, I grew up watching Juan Pablo Montoya, which is another ex-Williams driver,
Yeah.
race, and he was like, her hero. And 20 years later, she's like racing him at the Indy 500, like passing and getting past. Amazing. And kind of jockeying for position. And I think that's such an inspiring thing to talk to people about, that you follow your passions, and if you work hard and you do a good job and you just keep pushing, you can achieve that. Like, nothing is ever out of reach if you're actually reaching for it. Like, if you put in the effort, you can achieve that. And I just, your story is great, because it, the funny thing is I get the question a lot on Core of like, how do you get a job in Formula One, and I ask that question purposefully because I know people want to know. But strangely enough, the number one answer that I hear is through social media. Like, they're engaging the Formula One team social media, and then somebody responds like with a private message, and it's like, hey, have you ever considered, much like your situation is, they saw me, they worked with me, and oh, by the way, Claire needs help. Can you?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I totally agree on what you just said. It's a good mix. I mean, obviously, you always need a little bit of luck, and you need to be at the right spot at the right time. But also, yeah, you need to work on that, and you need to try to be very consistent in the level of good work you produce. And then, yeah, you can see, I mean, if I can sit here, have that podcast with you after all those years, if everyone else can do that as well. My job, and also everyone can do a podcast if the person is passionate enough and loves what he or she is doing and keeps pushing, basically.
What didn't you expect about Formula One life?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I think I didn't really see, or I was surprised of sometimes how people interact, and also how close drivers are to the team, how close team bosses are with the team. Like, it's not a different world they are in. So they sit in the same room, and they're as human as everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And this is basically the same in the whole paddock. And that I mean, it was not a big surprise, but it was a nice understanding that people are not, nobody is more special than somebody else. I think that's a good one.
I don't know if you guys have this show out there, but there used to be a show called Undercover Boss. And, you know, it's always this like CEO of a huge company is completely disconnected from the company. And there's all these problems and like frustrations and toxic culture. And then the CEO, you know, disguises himself. He goes into the company and realizes it's just a total disaster, you know, and all of a sudden he's like, holy cow, you know, I didn't see this, you know, and then he makes all these changes. And I think that's probably why Formula One teams are so efficient. You know, you mentioned it earlier. It's like a very kind of smooth dance that's happening inside the garage and with the engineers and the drivers and the team. And that's because, you know, guys like Jost are in the garage. They're in the, you know, the debriefs and the briefs, and they're in every, you know, part of the day and day. And I think that's a testament to the efficiency that you see in a team is really, they come down and they get in the mud with everybody else.
Yeah, and I mean, in the end, you are a team, no matter which role you have, and a team is only as strong as everyone can be. And if you have weak or people making mistakes or weak team members, you need to help them to get better, and to understand all that. You need to be with the team, obviously, in my perspective, or in my mind. And yeah, I think that works quite well. And yeah, that was quite nice to see.
How I mean, how are sponsors? I mean, how you are obviously a part of hospitality and that part of the world. To me, I've always felt like sponsorships to teams and drivers, you know, is generally the most misunderstood transaction out there. I think, you know, I believe that businesses, the optics or the perception of it is that, you know, they write a big check and they get a logo on the car, you know, and
sometimes reality, the check is not that big.
but it's more than that. It's, you know, it's a sales tool, you know, because I think that, you know, the more sponsorship that comes into motorsports, like if a sponsor is listening to this podcast and then they, you know, they call your team up and they're like, hey, you know, I want to be a part of this. It makes the sport healthier, you know, and it makes the infrastructure around the sport that much more healthy, you know, because then it fuels driver sponsorships and support series sponsorships and so on. And I always revert back to Andretti Hospitality because I had dinner with a driver the night before the race. Wow. And, you know, and he was a young kid coming up in an IndyCar. And I asked him, I'm like, you know, you're knocking on doors trying to find sponsors. Like, why? And, you know, he's like, hospitality and paddock experiences, you know, he's like, you know, and I was like, okay, you know, I get that. He's like, but the number one value that we give is the business to business transactions that take place in the paddock. So you are eating with a, you know, with a professional chef, and you are surrounded by executives and whatnot. And, you know, and business owners are talking to business owners, and, you know, actors or whatever are talking to investors and so on. And the next day I was sitting having lunch and hospitality, and the sheer amount of business cards moving around that table was mind-boggling, you know, and me, the entrepreneur in me, is sales guy, is like, holy cow, like I would write a team a check just to have this access. I could care less if I could care less if my logo's on the car, you know, maybe that's an adder, but like to sit here with people that are in businesses that, you know, are prospects of mine, or, you know, vendors that I would need to make my business better, is enormous. It's hard to find places like that anymore, you go to shows and it's sales guys everywhere, and it's really hard to connect and engage. But I really, it was so genuine and authentic because everybody had this deep passion for motorsports. And so they connected over motorsports. And then, through that connection, it was like, well, what do you do? Well, this is what I do. I need that. What do you do? Oh, I do this. Well, I need that too, and all of a sudden, I think my wife got a couple of customers from that event too. And it was just like, wow, I see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the total a different perspective, which probably not everyone watching the race from home sees. That is a big business platform as well.
Yeah.
For sponsors, for partners, for invited guests. And I witness what you just said. I see that basically every weekend that people come together and if it makes sense, they do business together, and why not? And I think that's one. That's why Paddock Club works that much, or this well as well, because it gives you that's an experience, or that's a platform you can enter with paying money. Basically, you have the great experience, but also you get to know people who also love the experience, but also you get in touch with those people, and maybe you can get some business out of that. And I think that's one of the factors why Paddock Club is so successful.
It really is. Vegas has been getting just trashed here stateside because, somebody came out and said that they had $100,000 tickets, and of course on Quora, I just start getting hammered with these questions about how out of touch Formula One is with the world. And I'm like, that's not a ticket for me and my son to go watch a race. Like that's for, a major corporation to bring VIPs and prospects and have an experience.
Yeah.
I hope through this podcast that message starts to get out there that actually, no, that is a very, very valuable tool.
Yeah. And you have to see the level which you want to experience. And basically F1, it was not always like this, but basically F1 is quite accessible for people. And we try to, I think F1 works on it and tries to make it more accessible and affordable as well. And it's not, as you said, like not every ticket is $10,000 or so. You can get it a little bit cheaper.
Yeah. If as long as you're not like me and wait till the last minute, my wife goes, we're going to Austin, right? And I was like, I think so, maybe. I was like, I think all the tickets are sold out. I didn't know that they pushed them out in clumps, wasn't like, here's all of our tickets, buy them up and then we're sold out. It was like they pushed them out in clumps. And so I go online and I was like, oh my gosh, they're available. And, all I could get was, general access for like $400 a ticket. And, she's totally happy with that. She's like, can we sit in the grass, and watch the race? And I was like, I guess, so.
Yeah, which is also a great experience, I guess.
Yeah. No, we're excited to go. It'll be our first actual live race. And I can't wait to attend it and check it out.
Nice.
So I have to ask you the question. Every podcast gets this question.
Okay.
And you have a really unique perspective for this question, which only drivers have had a really good vantage point for this question. So, big question I get, I'm X years old and I want to be a Formula One driver, or I want to be a Formula One engineer or work for a Formula One team. You have a really good vantage point because you've seen it from a team owner to a team principal to, I imagine you're around, the engineers and the drivers and everybody. What is that X factor trait that everyone in the paddock has that gets them to that level?
Well, I think first of all, everyone who wants to go in this way, everyone pushes really hard and everyone works really hard. No matter which which level actually. But most of them, I think for you need sort of you need an ego. So you need to be a little bit of a, sometimes you need to be a bit like strong, and you need to fight for what you want.
Yeah.
But also I think it's the passion, like to being able to work in such a iconic and historic sport as well. And I think that's the whole bubble, or the whole what you need to be able to work there. And also I think you need to be very open-minded and very open to new things, because we travel so much, we see so many different countries, and you get in touch with so many different people and nationalities, and so I think if you're open-minded, that helps a lot as well.
Is it really a meritocracy? I mean, are the best people in that field, in that role?
Yeah, I think in most fields it's like that. Yes.
Yeah.
As I mean, I cannot not judge everyone, because some of the professions I even haven't learned. But from what I heard, I mean, I cannot see if a mechanic used the right tool. But from what I heard and what I know, and how passionate, even if you sit together with somebody for a beer in the evening after a long weekend, and you hear the people talking, how passionate they are about their field they work in, and that's the same with everyone,
right?
No matter which level it is, and I think that makes it very special.
That's awesome. I appreciate you being on the show. I really do. I honestly, I did not expect just the sheer amount of support from people that work in this sport to come out. I mean, this is my second recording today. I think I have 2 tomorrow and 2 the rest of the week. And I'm really thankful. I mean, because you guys are the best at what you do, but you're also really approachable and normal people. And, you're functioning in one of the coolest sports, fastest growing sports in the world. And, I appreciate you sharing your story. It's tough for people to get up and jump on a podcast and, share their story. I appreciate it.
No, my absolute pleasure. And thanks again for giving me the opportunity as well. And I think also that's also a part of why the paddock is like how it is, because most of the people are approachable and I mean, as I said earlier, we are still humans and human beings.
Yeah.
And with a little bit of passion. I mean, I think you could hear it, that I am passionate about what I do as well. I could tell stories and stories probably whole night long. But maybe we do a second podcast at some point.
Are you going to be in Austin?
I will, yes.
Okay, we have to connect there, because I just, you can only do so much on the show. Like a lot of the shows are like, hey, are we still recording? Let me tell you this story, and it's those are the stories to me that make me more passionate about motorsports, is because you just hear stories, and it connects you to the sport. So one day I hope teams will come out and, say, man, back in the day, so-and-so used to, they'd leave the pit wall and they'd come out and they'd start throwing stuff across the room, or, kicking tables over, and like be that authentic, and I think you'll see more explosive growth come from the sport.
Because it happens.
Yeah. We've seen it on Drive to Survive. We've seen a couple of helmets get tossed. Yeah. Awesome. Lars, thank you so much. Seriously.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for your time. I know it's getting late, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's dark now. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.